And we are live.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. My name is Amy Schlussler-Schmidt, and I serve as the City of East Lansing's Community Development and Engagement Manager for the City of East Lansing. And within that role, I help to administer the city's Community Development Block Grant Program. I am joining you this evening from my office in East Lansing. And at this time, I will call the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report Public Hearing meeting to order. This evening, we will hold a public hearing for the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, or also known as the CAPER document. The CAPER document is an annual performance report that the city submits to HUD each year, which reports to HUD how the funds were spent and any program accomplishments that occurred during the prior program year. In this case, the city is reporting on any activities and expenditures that occurred between July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. In years past, this particular public hearing has been held in the month of September, but given the COVID-19 pandemic, HUD provided municipalities the opportunity to submit their financial documents and performance reports by December 31st, following a 15-day written public comment period. So in this case, the city began its written public comment period, which was noticed in the Lansing State Journal on December 14th, and the written portion of the public comment concluded at 5 p.m. this evening. We are now hosting a formal public hearing before the city submits its official financial report document to HUD. Given that sort of introduction, I'm now going to move on to item 2, which is communications from the audience. This provides an opportunity for anyone in the virtual audience to speak with regarding city-related matters. I'd like to point out that in this particular portion, you can speak to any issues, but for item 3, public comments will be heard specific to the CAPER document, so specific to the financial report. Following this portion of the meeting, audience members, as I mentioned, will be able to speak specifically to that document. I am serving and doing a little bit of double duty this evening, so I'm serving as both the lead and secretary. So I will share callers' information by calling on the last 3 digits, or in some cases there are names from their Zoom account. While the following is not a requirement, it does help myself. If you do choose to speak, please consider sharing your name and an address for the record. If you do not wish to speak, you can simply indicate by saying pass. And so I am going to go ahead and call on the first 3 digits. The first caller ends in the last 3 digits 333. And caller, this is your opportunity to speak to any city-related matters. And you should be unmuted now.
I wanted to speak to the item on the public hearing. Should I do that now or wait?
I think if you want to speak specific to the public hearing, we should wait until item 3.
All right, I'll do that.
Thank you. I am now moving on to the caller with the last 3 digits, 858. Again, you can speak regarding any item, but if it's specific to the public hearing, you might wish to switch to item 3 or speak during that time. And I'm going to, again, the last 3 digits are 858, and I'm going to unmute you now. Caller 858, the last 3 digits, you should be able to speak now. I believe caller 858, you are still muted. I believe if you're on a phone, sometimes *8 can be helpful.
Okay, do you have me now?
Yes, I can. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I have 2 questions about the table in the report to HUD, which I did not understand. So is this the appropriate time to ask those?
Certainly questions are fine during this comment, or you can wait until the 3rd item. If they're specific to the document, you might just want to wait a couple of moments to the document, but I'm happy to answer them now or try to.
All right. Well, let me ask the first one, and then maybe if it's too complex, we can come back to the second one later. In the complicated table called proposed versus actual outcomes on pages 2 to 6 of the document, there are two programs on which $5,000 in CDGB funds are apparently spent. First, the Affordable Housing Program, and secondly, the Affordable Housing Rehabilitation Assistance Program. The table says that there are 4 households were actually assisted by the Affordable Housing Program with CDBG funds, and 5 households were actually assisted by the Affordable Housing Program. It also says that the 10 households were expected to number households to be assisted by the program, a total of 10. So can you explain the 2 columns called percent complete? One column says 40 or 50% was completed for each of these programs. The other one says percent complete column says 100% was completed for each of these programs.
Sure. And I think, I don't know if you're in front of a computer screen, but let me provide just a quick understanding. Oh, I apologize. I think that just lost my screen. Okay, here we go again. So this document, this template report document, the template itself is determined by HUD. So this table is created by HUD. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is because I only have so many editing qualities for the table. And so when it discusses, for example, 10 households, if you kind of look at the top of the document, it says expected strategic plan. So the strategic plan for HUD is the same as the consolidated annual performance. The 5-year consolidated plan to HUD. And so what HUD is basically having the City of East Lansing report on is say from the 2015 through 2020 program year, and this was reporting on the 2019 program year, so year 4 of that 5-year document, we expected, for example, as you mentioned, to serve 5 households or 10 households or whatever that is. And then the next column over, so like if we take the Affordable Housing Rehabilitation Program, so over a 5-year period, it was expected we would serve 10 households. And what we reported to HUD is that as of this date, we have reached 50% of that threshold. So we've served 5. If you move over another column, it talks about annual accomplishments, and that indicates 1 household. So I know that it's a little bit difficult to kind of decipher through, but I can't control that. I can't change those criteria, if that makes sense, but that is how HUD reviews sort of accomplishments.
All right, so they are not talking about, they're talking about different populations in the 2% completed.
Correct. Right. Yep, and it's households completed. Yep, so for like the affordable housing, it would be 10 households and 5 have been completed. In the HOPE program, which is a down payment assistance program, 10 households was the goal. 4 have been completed. 1 was this year, for example. 1 in each program year.
All right. Okay. Well, should I go ahead and ask the second question as well?
If it's really entirely your decision. If it's something that you would like me to specifically write to HUD about, like share your specific question, then you might want to wait until item 3. But if it's sort of a general question, then now I think is appropriate.
It's a question about the racial and ethnic composition of families assisted in the table. So I can either do that now or we can wait till 3.
Sure. Again, either way, I'm happy to try to answer a question now, but your question might necessarily, be recorded to HUD as part of the document, but I'm happy to answer the question.
Okay, well, then let's just go ahead and try it. By the way, do you need my name and location as well?
That would be helpful if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Okay, I'm David Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y. I live in East Lansing in Ingham County.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So in the table titled CR10, Racial and Ethnic Composition of Families Assisted, on page 8 says that 2 families were assisted, 1 white and 1 Asian, while the table comparing the proposed versus actual outcomes on pages 2 to 6 says that 4 households were assisted by the Affordable Housing Program with CDBG funds, and 5 households were assisted by the Affordable Housing Rehab Assistance Program. Are these 2 tables describing 2 different sets of households?
So,
or were a total of 2 households assisted, as suggested in the table of racial and ethnic composition, or were 9 households assisted?
2 total households were assisted. 1 was through the HOPE program, the Home Ownership Assistance Program. It provides down payment assistance and minor rehabilitation assistance to an income eligible family to be able to purchase a home in East Lansing. The second household receives funds for a rehabilitation program. So it brings that program up to sort of code compliance and provides like weatherization improvements, perhaps, improvements to doors, windows, a roof, things of that nature. So 2 total households were provided with assistance. I think, again, kind of getting back to those different metrics of 4 and 5, there is a report to HUD kind of showing overall progress for a 5-year period. And so that's where those higher numbers would be coming into play versus an individual time period. So that July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. But two specific households were served. Now other residents were served, for example, like through a sidewalk program that was funded and completed and things of that nature. But 2 specific households were funded this past program year.
Okay, but so it seems that you're saying there's 2 plus 7, that there are 9 households totally assisted by the 2 programs, right?
Nope, there were in the last program year, so from July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, there were 2 households assisted total.
I see. All right, so I guess we'll leave it at that. But it seems to me that for the total of 9 households that are being listed, it would be good to show the racial and ethnic composition of the larger number.
Oh, certainly. So I think, again, you're kind of referring back to other households that were served. If those households were served in prior program years, so perhaps like, July 1, 2016 through June 30, 2017, that information is reported in like a prior year CAPER. Because what we don't want to do is report on something called duplication of benefits. So in other words, I report to HUD or staff reports to HUD on the specific people that were provided assistance during a particular program year. So HUD already has, or I could certainly provide you with former CAPER documents that would provide that demographic breakout.
It seems it'd be good for people of East Lansing to be able to see what that racial and ethnic composition, given that these are very sensitive issues in the community at this time.
Sure. Maybe we could put up some prior CAPER documents onto the webpage just so people could see that. Sure.
All right. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your call. Okay. All right, and we will now move into Eric Berg. You are welcome to speak, and your time begins now.
I actually have nothing to say right now, but thank you for hosting. And
absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. And I have a Jonathan Sheehan. You are able to speak on really any matters. And your time begins now.
I also have nothing to say right now, but thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay. So we will now move on to item 3, which is the public hearing regarding the specific CAPER document. So once again, I mentioned at the very beginning that this is a financial report document sharing accomplishments from July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. I am going to go ahead and just provide a very brief PowerPoint presentation to you, just explaining a little bit more about the program itself. And at the completion of that, it's only going to take a couple of minutes. We will open it up to formal public comments regarding this document. So the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report does cite program accomplishments from July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. The City of East Lansing, if you're unfamiliar, is an entitlement community as identified by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. We love our acronyms in City Hall. Those funds are used and were used to provide resources to either income eligible persons or allocated to eligible census tract areas. Those census tract areas are determined obviously with whatever the most recent census was. So in this case, it was identified as the 2010 census tract area. The City of East Lansing must essentially for all projects that it funds meet national objectives. Those objectives must either benefit low and moderate income persons, it must prevent or eliminate slum or blight areas, or it must meet community development needs that have urgency because the existing conditions pose a threat or other financial resources are not available. In the particular case of all of the projects funded the prior program year, I highlighted it, they were benefiting low and moderate income persons or were in eligible census tract areas. Just a couple of program accomplishments that I wanted to bring to the forefront because I know that the document is a little bit lengthy in nature. Number one, were a housing accomplishment. So one household was provided with down payment assistance to purchase a home in East Lansing. That household was provided with more than $10,000 in funds in what we call down payment assistance, or DPA. One household, a different household, was also provided with financial assistance towards the rehabilitation of the home. So again, with code compliance issues, weatherization improvements, things of that nature. Program infrastructure accomplishments, so sort of brick and mortar, if you will. There was the completion of the Albert Avenue Phase 2 project. And then there was, the project was bid and began on the Albert Avenue Phase 3 project. This is primarily along Albert Avenue, as you can imagine. And what happens is it's in CDBG's eligible census tract areas. And as funding comes in and is allocated by City Council, we install like ADA accessibility and curbs and replace sidewalk in that area. The Bailey Park Improvement Project did begin, and this provided ADA accessibility into the park. This was matched with other grant funds provided by the state of Michigan, and then payments were made towards the City of East Lansing Section 108 loan. So those were the major financial accomplishments. As I mentioned before, the project did begin on Albert Avenue and the Bailey Park project. Those began very late spring, primarily due to COVID-19. Because construction was delayed, but they have since been completed. So those final program accomplishments will be reported in next year's CAPER document. So that completes my brief presentation regarding program requirements. And so at this time, I am going to open the public hearing specific to the CAPER document. Again, I'm just going to reiterate that I will share callers' information by sharing the last 3 digits of their phone numbers. If you would perhaps share your name and where you are calling in from, that would be very helpful for the record, but you do not need to do so. If you do not wish to speak, you can simply indicate by saying pass. And I am now formally opening up the public hearing portion of the meeting regarding the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. And I will go ahead and begin with callers. So I have an Eric Berg still on the line, and I'm going to unmute you now.
Still nothing comes to mind, but again, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am now going to move to a caller that ends in the last 3 digits, 333. And caller, you are now able to speak regarding the CAPER document now.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, this is Chris Root. I'm calling from 729 Sunset Lane in East Lansing in Ingham County. Thank you for holding this hearing. I've had concerns through this year and previous years, not that what you're reporting is ineligible, but wondering whether it's really, some of them are really the highest priority if we really want to help low and moderate income families. I'm not challenging, at this point, I'm not challenging the Avondale Square loan repayment, clearly getting that loan repaid as quickly as we can saves money. So, at this point in that process, getting that, I understand putting huge amounts of money into that. And I imagine we won't do a project like that again. But I understand, where we are on it right now. I also have a concern about the next largest payment, which is the sidewalks. And, I understand that HUD has found that to be acceptable. But, in terms of how we are actually helping low and moderate income people in our community, it's just hard for me to think that the most important thing to do is put in ADA curb cuts and repair sidewalks. Not that we don't need good quality sidewalks so that people won't fall and trip, but it just seems, this is a particular set of funds from HUD for a particular purpose, and it just doesn't seem to me that that's a real high priority. And I guess the perspective I'd like to bring at this point is that we did do something new in East Lansing this year by the council passing the resolution declaring racism to be a public health crisis for the city. And the resolution is very lengthy, and I won't quote very much of it, but one of the whereas clauses says, whereas racism and social inequities cause persistent discrimination and disparate outcomes in many areas of life, including housing, education, employment, and criminal justice. And then in the therefore section of the resolution, it says the city of East Lansing will work to progress as an equity and anti-racist organization. I'm really grateful that we have taken such a clear stance as a city through the city council unanimously adopting this resolution. And what I'm hoping is that when we look at how to expend CDBG funds in the next year, that we will take this to heart and think about not only how to meet the guidelines of HUD, but also how this can really reflect the stance that the city has taken to try to work at becoming an anti-racist organization. And I think that just speaks a lot to the priority that we give to low and moderate income households, and particularly those who are Black and other people of color. Thank you.
I think you're still muted.
I apologize. Thank you all for telling me that. Okay, so Jonathan, you are able to address the public hearing portion of the meeting now as well.
Yeah, hi. Again, thank you for hosting this. I just had a question / comment about the table 1 in the document. All this information is super useful because it's important to know who's being assisted and how well the actual implementation matches with the expected plan. But I was just wondering if the usefulness of it can be maximized, because I don't, from this table, can't get a clear understanding of what is considered a success versus not. I didn't know if it was based on a percentage of people met or percentage of the percentage complete, whether that was the best metric for success in a specific area. But also in a similar vein, I didn't know if these, like with the usefulness of it, if we have specific numbers of people that were expected to be helped by a program, what that is in relation to the total people in the community that could be benefited. So looking at this as a private citizen, I don't know whether, take for example, the child care assistance. It says that 75 people were expected to be helped, 13 were, but are there only 75 people in East Lansing that could be benefited by a program such as this? Or is that, yeah, I just didn't know how well this reflects the, I don't know if you get what I'm saying, but with the, it doesn't really paint the full picture in my eyes. And I didn't know if there's an easy way to optimize that.
Certainly. Well, I think accomplishments are very different, right, for every sort of individual. From a HUD perspective, so we receive the program dollars from HUD, and so then we report on any accomplishments to HUD, which is what this table is sort of indicating. But the thing that's sort of left out, if you will, or the piece of the pie, in my opinion, that's left out is that, for example, if you mentioned childcare assistance. So for this particular program year, no one was assisted, which we reported on because no funds were assisted in that particular program. So, this is sort of a very straightforward document to HUD stating that, over a 5-year period, we thought we would service these people. This past program year, we serviced these people in these categories. And so I certainly think that that's, straightforward with metrics from a metrics perspective. But I think what I would say is that, if we want to kind of continue the narrative of where people would like to see funding continue to go, I would really encourage individuals to take part in the budget process that begins. It will begin again in February this year, and there will be public hearings, likely held in March or April. So I think that that's probably the best advice I could provide, is that if individuals have strong opinions on where funding should be allocated each program year, that they share those with council, in any way that that's possible, because essentially what happens is HUD gives us funding, and then it is up to city council's determination on how those funds are going to be spent. And then this document really just kind of is an internal report card, if you will, saying this is what we've done in the past year, and this is where we're at with our 5-year plan. So I hope that might have been somewhat helpful, but I think that we can certainly continue the narrative as we go on.
Yeah, that did help. But with the, so is there any metric for each of these for the 5-year plan for like indicating success versus needs improvement, or is that something that's just discussed with the budget?
Well, I think that, so when we talk like expected, I don't know if you can see my screen, but expected strategic plan, right? We have goals, and then the actual strategic plan will show like, okay, we've only really done for acquisition and disposition of real property. We've only done 1. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of different opinions. Acquisition of property is very expensive. Maybe there were projects that weren't eligible in a CDBG eligible tract area, things of that nature. But I think that if you're looking at sort of pure metrics, what I would encourage individuals to pay attention to is the column that says expected strategic plan, and just know that strategic plan means 5 years. But if it says program year, expected program year, actual program year, that means for the past year. So for example, like with the HOPE program, we said we would serve 1 person, we did serve 1 person. I would certainly deem that as, successful, or, and that's why like with childcare assistance, it says 0 and 0, and it's not applicable because we didn't serve anybody. But I think if you're really looking at those metrics, I would encourage you to kind of pay attention to those categories. Okay,
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And I will now move on to the caller. I believe this is the last caller ending in 963. And caller, you are able to now share any public comments regarding the document.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Hi, this is Alice Drager at 621 Sunset Lane in East Lansing, Ingham County. I appreciate the explanations of questions folks have had. I think that the point Jonathan was trying to make, as I understood it, was not about allocation and budgeting, but what I took to be a pretty reasonable question about what does it mean when we have these goals and they're not anywhere near being met, it looks like, over the course of the 5 years. So that seems like a concern. I think it's fine to have a strategic plan, but if the truth is that our actual allocations are going to be substantially lower than what we're planning, it seems like it makes sense to be more honest and aim lower. With regards to the ADA ramps, I'm going to admit skepticism that the city is doing something productive in this way. We learned from careful research into the retaining wall case involving the city attorney's property, which involved the federal fraud suit, that in fact there had been ramps there before. And yes, they changed them to a different type of ramp with the metal buttons essentially. But both types of ramps are actually ADA ramps. One is just the type that you build if you happen to be rebuilding. So the use of money for these sidewalks simply, frankly, seems like a way to backfill the city's general fund and to use money that is meant for low to moderate income people and is in fact being used for public infrastructure as a way to backfill the city's budget. And I would hope that the city council become more honest about that and that the people of East Lansing can look at the question of whether or not that's an appropriate use of CDBG money. Finally, I had a question with regard to the cost of administration, which seems quite large compared to what was actually achieved in the last year. During the days when a very small amount of money went through a tortured process regarding social service agencies, I recognized that there was a lot more staff time spent accepting individual grants, helping agencies work on those grants, figuring out who would get the grants, working with a dedicated committee. But all of that is ended. It surely can't take a lot of staff time to pay a loan to HUD. That's basically letting the Treasury Department and the city know to write some checks. It can't take very much work, I would not think, to administer the sidewalk program, because basically what we're doing is turning over money to pay for an engineering project, unless maybe what we're doing is charging for engineering services. And then we've only held 2 small programs. So unless there are many applicants and it's taking an enormous amount of staff time to work through the applications, the cost of administration actually seems quite high. And it seems again to be a system in which we're basically using HUD money meant for low and moderate income housing going to backfill the city's general fund. And I recognize fully this is probably a game that a lot of cities play, and we're not special in this way, but it is to me somewhat troubling. So I would hope that we would look at these kinds of things. And finally, my last concern is trying to understand the question of who the chosen few are with regard to the housing assistance, either the purchase assistance or the rehabilitation assistance. Only a total of 2 families in the entire city were helped through this program in a single year. There must be hundreds of families that could use this assistance. So I'm curious to know how the chosen few are made aware of this, how the average family could possibly know about it, and how they could have a shot at this extraordinary assistance that only a very few are really getting. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. And I can address a couple of those things. First of all, I wanted to point out that the staff salary does go to support 5 different positions, and it does go to support engineering time for the Department of Public Works. So we have to track any and all time spent on the program, and it certainly includes financial reporting to HUD, quarterly reports, any time spent from payment of bills, any time spent we have to track with HUD. So it does go to support staff salary, and this year it did go to support some engineering time or any Department of Public Works people that did work on the Albert Avenue phase 3. And in terms of the housing question, Capital Area Housing Partnership does accept all applications for income eligible persons, and individuals are able to apply online. They are accepted on a first come, first served basis. And obviously, depending on, applicant eligibility, then they are they go through the financial vetting process. So that is how people are determined for the program. So I just wanted to kind of
So is there a particular date that opens, that people know that it's a first come, first serve, and it opens on a special date?
We have not closed either program in the last several years. So there has been funding available to applicants for the past several years. We have not had to close it because of lack of funding. We have come close because, I know that $5,000 or $20,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you're servicing one household and the average household receives up to $20,000 in assistance, we're trying to constantly use prior year program funds and things of that nature. But this information is on our webpage, and then it's linked to Capital Area Housing Partnership does send out press releases and has lots of workshops throughout the community and always shares information about the programs.
And were the sidewalks being repaired? Did they have ramps? They didn't lack ramps, right?
I would need to look into that specifically for you. If I would just need to look into the specifics with Department of Public Works before I answer that question, because
Well, I've actually tracked them. They haven't lacked ramps.
I think it's often a situation where both occurs. So, all right. I do not see any more individuals on the public comment. And so I think given that, we are going to go ahead and close the public hearing portion of the meeting. There is no further business regarding or on the agenda this evening. So we are going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I thank you very much for everyone that joined us and for all of your comments. They will be shared with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and everyone have a nice evening. Thank you.